Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Rahul Mahajan. He's a sociologist and news analyst and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. Hi, Rahul.
Hi, Sonali.
As hundreds of people are arrested in a second day of protests in New York City over the non-indictment of Officer Daniel Pantaleo for the death of Eric Garner, another unarmed black man has been killed by a white police officer, this time in Phoenix, Arizona. Romaine Brisbane was killed by an unnamed officer and was not carrying any weapons when he was shot in front of his girlfriend and child. Police have justified his killing, saying there was a gun and some marijuana in his car, and have invoked a past criminal record. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, Ohio, the Justice Department has found widespread violations of people's rights by police. Attorney General Eric Holder personally announced the results of the probe, which concluded that there is, quote, a pattern or practice of unnecessary force, including shooting residents, striking them in the head, and spraying them with chemicals. Just days ago, a 12-year-old African-American boy named Tamir Rice was fatally shot by a Cleveland officer who, 2 years ago, had been declared unfit to serve on the force. Well, Rahul, this pattern of police abuse is so similar across the United States, whether we're talking about Phoenix or Cleveland or New York or LA. I mean, imagine if another nation had such barbarism. How do you think we would view it?
Well, Sonali, what's a police state? The conventional definition of a place where you can be put in jail for expressing your opinion, that doesn't really apply to the United States unless you're a black man on a street corner expressing your opinion that the police shouldn't harass you. You know, people like you and I don't expect to be thrown in jail. On the other hand, if you imagine defining a police state as a state in which the police form a separate order with effective legal impunity, then the United States has really become one. You know, the police never had a great deal of accountability, but in the past it was less important because they played less of a role. With more and more active policing on a day-to-day basis, this sort of new police state nature starts to impinge on us all, although, of course, the most on young black men.
And we'll have more coverage specific to the New York case of Eric Garner later in the show. Another widespread pattern in the United States is that of low pay and poor working conditions in national fast food chains around the country. Workers in nearly 200 cities yesterday walked off their jobs in the largest such action since the campaign first began 2 years ago. This time, employees of dollar stores and convenience stores also joined in. In St. Louis, Missouri, workers participated in a die-in in solidarity with Ferguson's anti-police brutality activists. The workers are demanding $15 an hour in wages and the right to unionize. The fast food walkout comes just a week after Black Friday protests by Walmart workers. Rahul, do you see these walkouts as part of a resurgence of the labor movement in the U.S., or is that too optimistic?
Sonali, I really don't see it as a part of a general resurgence. I think what it is a sign that the lowest stratum of the working class has been so exploited, so abused, so victimized by many things, including the lack of raising of the minimum wage during the entire Obama presidency, that they're fed up enough to want to strike, and I see the sort of general public support for a lot of what they're doing as a sign that the exploitation is so bad that it's difficult for any but the most hardened Republicans to actually defend it. I don't see that spreading to the traditional unionized sectors or the ones that used to be unionized before corporations went on their union busting binge.
And even as workers are walking out over poor pay, economists are celebrating over the November jobs report, which found this morning that the U.S. economy has added 321,000 new jobs. This year is apparently the strongest year in terms of hiring since 1999. But in a footnote to a report by the LA Times of the jobs report, quote, the largest increases are not yet lifting most Americans' paychecks. Well, Rahul, isn't this exactly what corporate America wants? Lots of good jobs, lots of poor jobs at very low pay. That means greater productivity and higher profits. Should we be celebrating this, the fact that the official unemployment rate is now at a 6-year low of 5.8%?
You know, I'm not really sure what corporate America wants for the macro economy. Much of corporate Europe seems not to want that kind of expansion, given its enthusiasm for continued austerity policies. So it's not exactly clear to me. They certainly, individual corporations want to maximize the number of people they can exploit in the right situations, although even there, their enthusiasm for firing the lowest paid workers is hard to match. I think we should rejoice that, of course, that unemployment is lower. It's a good thing for all those people who have even really crappy jobs. It's better than having no job. But we also need to remember there's a ratchet effect where every time this kind of thing happens, you eliminate jobs that have some level of protection, that have higher wages, that have some kind of security, for jobs that have low wages, worse conditions, and no security.
Rahul Mahajan, always a pleasure to have you on. We'll talk to you again next week.
See you then.
Rahul Mahajan is our daily Newsflash guest expert. He's a sociologist and news analyst and author of Full Spectrum Dominance, U.S. Power in Iraq and Beyond. This is Uprising. When we come back, we'll take a look at a series of protests that took place around Mexico's disappearances. Those protests happened here in the United States. Stay tuned.